I'll talk about God. You talk about Him, and I'll talk about Him. And you know what? That's fine. But nothing happens. I tell you, my friends, yesterday there was a woman who was spared from abortion. She went up to have her child aborted. The technician said, there are two, which means twins. They're twins. She left, and Eleanor took her to a woman's concern. Imagine she went up there to kill one, but there were two, and she decided not to do it. And I'm looking at the ultrasound right now. Two little babies. At this moment, I'm looking at the ultrasound. Two little babies. But because people were out there, they could take her to a safe place. Because people weren't only talking about God. People were putting their lives on the line. Bishops, what about you? Priests, what about you? Deacons, what about you? People, what about you? Who's putting their life on the line? So as a result of people being out there yesterday, two babies were saved, and a woman was spared from being tormented for the rest of her life for killing her children. That's something? That's something? Not because, we're talking about God. Oh, there was prayer out there. We're talking to God. And there was this great miracle. Great miracle. We've got to pray for those technicians that they start telling the women more and more stuff. Even that it leaks out. She left that table, and they brought her to a woman's concern. And they spent the day with her. As much time that was needed, and she saw the ultrasound, and I'm looking at the picture right now. Two babies. So amazing. So amazing. You want to know why? Because people not only were talking about God, but people were out there praying, and people were witnessing, and people were doing something. People had their lives on the altar, you see. There's a big thing about talking about God, and there's a much bigger thing about living it. And I know not all of us live it perfectly. As a matter of fact, none of us live it perfectly. We all limp, and I understand that. But it's time, my friends, that we place our lives upon the altar of sacrifice, and we start living for Him and not for ourselves. It's that simple. I remember in South Pacific, happy talking, happy talk. Talk about things you like to do. Yeah, talk about things. You can talk all you want. You can talk all you want. It's when you start living it. It's when the Spirit of God gives you the conviction that you're going to count in this world as light in the midst of darkness, as a city set upon a hill that cannot be hidden. That's when the attacks come. They don't come when you're sitting in your room talking about God. They come when you give your life to the Lord and you live no longer for yourself, but for Him. That's when the attacks come. That's when the enemy knows he's got something to attack. But most people, no, there ain't much there. There ain't much there. Now, I've never spoken like this, but you know what? It's good that I do. Because you see, you've got to wake up and smell the coffee, or smell the roses, or smell whatever you need to smell. You've got to wake up. And you've got to snap out of this kind of complacency of I'm born again. I've got the baptism of the Holy Ghost. Yeah, you got something. I don't know what you got. But if you're not living it, it's just a reproach against you. When's the last time you've gone out of your way? When's the last time you've gone out of your way? That's the issue. When's the last time your plans were destroyed because he had better plans? And you gave up your plans. When's the last time? You know? We can talk about all this stuff. We can talk God talk all we want. Listen, I went to 5 years of the seminary. We talked all about God. I don't know the God we talked about. I think you know what I called him? I called him the antiseptic God. I took a course in Christology. That is the study of Christ. It was the most antiseptic course I've ever taken. And you know what? Jesus Christ is nothing that's antiseptic. He's gutsy. He's got his hand in the middle of garbage in people's lives. The Christology course I took was antiseptic. Totally antiseptic. What? I'll tell you. You know what I said to my teacher? John Galvin. His name is, he's a priest. And he teaches in the place in Washington, whatever it's called. The chief school of theology in Washington. I wouldn't give any extra money to that on the collection because they've got some devils in that school too. Some of them are good, but anyway, let me tell you what Galvin said when I went up to him. I said, this course is not really about Jesus. It's like a survey of what people say about Jesus, and it's also antiseptic. He said, well, I'd give this course to atheists. I said, well, you would, and nothing would ever happen to them. They'd never meet Jesus because there's no Jesus in this course. The Jesus that I know is not the Jesus that you're talking about. You're talking about the Jesus that Willie Moxon talks about. You're talking about the Jesus of Bultmann. But you're not talking about the Jesus of the church, the Jesus of the apostles, the Jesus of the apostolic fathers, the Jesus who brings deliverance, the Jesus who heals, the Jesus whoever lives to make intercession for us at the right hand of the Father. This is an antiseptic Jesus. He's not real. He's like the good old plastic Jesus in your automobile. Well, I teach the same course to atheists. I said, well, good for you. That's why when you speak, you are the most boring person in the whole world, because you've got nothing to say, because you've never met Jesus. Oh yeah, you talk all about him, but you never met the man, sir. I can assure you of that. You've never met the man. You've never met the man. You talk about him, you give courses about him, you do what you want about him, but you never met the man. Now my question is, have you met the man? If you've met Jesus and you're complacent and you're not doing what you need to do, you've got to ask yourself, have I ever met him? Have I ever met him? Have I ever come into contact with this Jesus? Or is it all a dream? Is it all a joke that the devil has put all around me? Because, it's not changed my life. It's not changed the way I live. It's not changed the way I give. It's not changed. I told you there was a man who came to me last week, beautiful man in our parish. I told you what he said to me. You know what he said to me? He said he was the co-pilot and he was the pilot and God was the co-pilot. All his life, he went to church. He thought he was born again. Oh, he said all these things. He said all these things. But you know what? One day God says, he wanted more, and he says, God said, I'm not giving you more until I become the pilot. And you're the co-pilot. Well, I'll tell you, when he finally surrendered, things began to happen. He met the man, and his life changed. Have you met the man? Like, have you met him? If you've met him, you better live differently. And not outwardly, but inwardly, by the Holy Ghost. Because the Holy Ghost will have you put your life on the altar, and you will be inconvenienced. Oh, yes. You will be inconvenienced if you've met the man. Most people are no threat to the devil. They say they've met Jesus, and their life is just the same. That's the way it is. If you met Jesus, what do you do with your money? You just put a couple of bucks in the plate on a Sunday? Keep it. You need it more than God does. Believe me. If you're making a salary and you put a couple of bucks in and you have a salary, I'm going to tell you, keep the couple of bucks, please.